Hello, everybody. How we all doing? Welcome to the Mountain Mystic podcast. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. As always, I am so happy to be here, sitting down to speak once more about embodiment, specifically about the embodied path. And today, specifically about sort of the second piece of the embodied path, which has everything to do with centering. Yes, today this episode is going to focus on the practice, the skill that is centering, coming to center, the center of your being. We will talk all about why this is important, especially given this crazy, crazy wild world we are living in. Oh my gosh, you guys, we are in wild times. I hope we're all doing okay out there. I sincerely hope we are all doing okay as we ride these wild tides, including the falls, the descents. My God, you guys, we as a collective are in a great descent right now, right? Things are falling apart. Things are getting scary. Things are getting really not great out there. And a lot of it's intentional, right? A lot of it is intentional on the part of leaders that just do not have the interest of the well-being of this earth in their hearts or on their minds. And not to go too far into that, especially as we are just opening this episode, but I do find it so important right up front to put into context where we're at. We're in wild times. We're in big times. A lot of the old is falling away, for better or for worse. And as this happens, we get to be the ones that show up for this world, that show up for our communities, that show up for the ecosystems we are part of and the ecosystems that are impacted by human action across the world. Right? This is embodiment. This is earth embodiment. This isn't embodiment or spirituality or self-help. That is all about self, right? Self and your own ascension path. This is about self in connection to the greater collective that we are all part of. This whole web of life on planet Earth. This is the work we are doing here, you guys. And again, today we get to focus on the part of this path, what I am calling the embodied path, that has to do with centering. Okay, so as I teach it, centering is the second piece of this path. Now we have to remember that the embodied path is not a linear, stepwise path. It is not about perfecting step A so that you can get to step B. No. Every part of the path is important. We are working on different aspects of the path at different times in our life, but we are also kind of always working on everything at once, right? Because that's just how life is. But for teaching purposes, centering comes in as this second piece, okay? So we spent a lot of time talking about the first piece that has everything to do with grounding, okay? Grounding. And I've spoken so much about this here on the podcast, even way more on YouTube. I've written so much about it. So, check out previous episodes, check out YouTube, check out my Substack, check out forestbody.com. There is so much information on grounding, you guys. So once we sort of start to get this understanding of grounding, right? This deep, deep sense of connection to ground, to the physical surface that holds us, to the earth that holds us, to our bodies, right? This deep sense of connection to body, to earth, to body and self as part of this earth. From this space, we are then ready to center. So in just a minute, we're going to dive deep into centering. But before we do, I want to take a step back even further to put into context what we are working on here on this podcast, but also the greater forest body platform that I've created. So again, that means, YouTube, Substack, forestbody.com. Yes, this podcast, Instagram, right? All the places I'm showing up. I am here to, again, teach this spiritual system that I'm calling the Embodied Path. And to teach it, as spoken to here, I am teaching the Embodied Path as this sort of 4-step process. Okay, so as we talked about, grounding, centering. Okay, then we come into alignment. Then we focus on discernment. Okay, this is the Embodied Path. Grounding, centering, alignment, discernment. And as you start to work with these concepts, again, they are practices, they are skills. And over time, they are states that arise naturally, right? And that's the goal here. We want to walk through life simply being grounded. We want to walk through life simply being centered. We want to walk through life being aligned. And as we are, we want to be discerning. We want to be making skillful choices that lead us each and all in the directions that best serve. And if they best serve, what that means is they are serving self. I mean, capital S self. Not your egoic self, right? Not the wounded, patterned self, but your higher self, your soul self, right? And as I teach, if it is serving self, capital S self, then it is also serving the collective, the whole web of life here on planet Earth. And I've talked about this, guys. I've talked about this as kind of a working hypothesis. It is not something that is in the collective ethos. I think it is a big stretch for a lot of us to believe this, to agree with it, right? That we can be in this world acting in a way that if something truly serves self, then it is also in service to, shall we say, the highest good of all, right? That's a big stretch for a lot of us to believe. So again, I like to speak to this as kind of a working hypothesis. And when I work with this concept, what I like to do, sort of hold the highest evolution of all beings, right? The highest good of all beings. And again, that doesn't mean that we each get everything we want and life is always rainbows and butterflies for everyone all at once. But what it requires is sort of this understanding of what we are here to do and what we are here to learn and experience. And if we can sort of sit in that space and contemplate that space and kind of come to an understanding of what that means, then I think it's fair to be able to sort of hold space for this vision of what life can be here on Earth. Life doesn't have to be a continuous unfolding of us just tearing each other down and competing and doing what I think is best for me while those actions push you down, right? That's not the way things have to be here on Earth. We can live in a world where, yes, we are grounded, we are centered, we are aligned within self, and we are making decisions, taking action that serves self, that truly serves self. Again, that's a capital S, self. And in doing so, it also serves life as a whole. It serves community, it serves local ecosystems, and yeah, maybe it also supports ecosystems across the globe. So that's the vision I hold. And we can put labels to it. Sometimes I like to speak to that as New Earth, although if you've been around, you know I have some qualms with that phrasing, but honestly, I think it's a good label. New Earth being this state where we are no longer in a state of being where it's me versus you, us versus them. I'm going to act in my own self-interest, and that means pushing you down. That means destroying ecosystems, right? We as humanity have evolved enough. We have the technology, we have the communication skills, we could have the awareness if only we chose to develop it, to make choices that lift ourselves up as we lift up others, okay? This is what we are here to do. This is the vision. This is the greater context for the embodied path. And I really hope you can keep this in mind as we then focus our attention to these specific skills, which, yes, on the surface may seem immediately self-serving. Okay, coming into center. Well, that's the center of self. That's the center of my being. Well, guess what? The practice of centering is entirely unselfish because, as we'll get into, and we can, start to get into this here, when we come into center, what we are setting the stage for is the ability to then expand our consciousness out beyond self. We want, and I'm going to say we need this, guys. The world needs this, is our ability to expand our consciousness, right? Our attention, our awareness out beyond self. Because as important as you are, this world, this earth, this universe is not just about you. There are billions, maybe trillions of beings here. And we all have to work as a collective to exist. And we do this by having some level of awareness of these other beings, okay? This does not mean that you walk through life with full awareness of every single being on this planet, right? That would be insane. That's not possible. But what we do, again, this is a skill that we develop, is we learn to walk through life holding some degree of awareness for other beings. Okay? Centering is going to help us out here. Because what we don't want to do, can swing the pendulum the other way, that we lose ourselves in the whole web, right? And this is a problem for a lot of people, right? How many people do we know, right? Maybe this is you. I know this is a big problem with women, is that we have been taught to lose ourselves. We have been taught to be selfless, right? Your own self doesn't matter. You live to serve others. And that's bullshit. That's totally bullshit, because you, as the sovereign being that you are, as the individual that you are, you matter, and you matter deeply. So you have to be able to walk through life centered within self. And from this centered space, taking care of self, doing what you need, doing what fills you up, brings you joy, brings you fulfillment. From this space, you also get to be in connection, right? That's this consciousness, your consciousness expanded out into connection with other beings. Does this make sense? If you're getting lost here, totally free to hit that rewind button, go listen to that again, because this is important. But this is also a concept that for a lot of humanity sort of requires this whole shift in perspective, right? We are moving out of the thinking and the way of being that is me or you, us or them, right? Me or the world, to the realm of and. It can be me and the world. It can be me and you. It can be us and them. Okay, we are dissolving the polarities that we've been taught are real, but turns out are false. We are dissolving polarities as we come into a different sort of understanding. So again, if you got lost in that, totally feel free to hit the rewind button, listen to it again. Have any questions? Leave a comment in the spaces where comments are available, places like YouTube, Instagram. Send me an email. Let me know. Okay, you guys, so we've got some of the greater context for what we are doing here with the Embodied Path. I just want to name one more thing before we dive into our conversation on centering. And I just want to help clarify sort of the way I am teaching this. To teach the Embodied Path, what I have done is sort of divide the body into work into two different categories, okay? So this whole time we've been talking about the Embodied Path in terms of sort of skills and states that we are developing. Again, talking about grounding, centering, alignment, and discernment, okay? These are, again, sort of the 4 qualities and states that we are working to embody. To do this, what I did is last year I sat down and I started writing out practices. Sort of what are the most important, most valuable practices that one can practice to develop these skills. What that became is this series currently titled something to the extent of 11 embodiment practices for cultivating your own sacred routine, right? This is all about practice. Okay, these are practices that you get to sit down with, you get to walk around with, you get to go out and live your life with, okay? Practice, practice, practice. That's what we're talking about when it comes to those 11 practices. Now, on this podcast, along with Substack and the greater blog, we are going through a series, going through all 11 practices. That is different than what we are doing here today. So if you are a little bit confused, I just want to name that those practice-centered episodes are a little bit different than what we are here today doing. Today, we are talking about centering, which I am categorizing as a skill/state. Okay, now that being said, we can do centering practices. Okay, I know it's a little bit confusing, but these are the systems we're working with. And I just wanted to name, we are here doing something a little bit different, focusing on the skill, focusing on the state that is centering. Now, in this episode, we will have a practice. This is not one of the 11 practices that are in that series that I'm sort of teaching in tandem. And if anything, if you're confused, you're like, Katie, what's going on? I don't understand the system. Then let it go. Listen along, read along if you are joining in with the blog. Do what shows up for you that is meaningful for you, and let go of any of the complexities that are hurting your head. Okay? Full permission to not have to totally understand and wrap your head around this spiritual system that I've created. I just find that having a system to go off of helps me to keep things on track, and it helps others to have something to wrap their mind around, right? We're all wired a little bit differently. And me, as someone who, was first drawn to the world of STEM, science and engineering, I really like having a system, a structure to go off of. It helps my mind not go crazy. But if this is something that makes your mind go crazy, then let it go. Don't worry about it. Show up, listen along, do what speaks to you. Make it as simple as that. Okay, with that, let us now turn our full attention to centering. Centering as the second piece of the embodied path. This is a skill. And as we practice this skill over time, it becomes a state that spontaneously arises. Okay, at first, we bring conscious attention and effort to practicing, to becoming skillful at this. And over time, this skill becomes a state that arises spontaneously. You get to walk through life being more and more centered. Okay, let's dive into it. Centering. The process of coming into the core of your being, becoming conscious of self, that's capital S, self, as you are in connection to the world that expands far beyond self. Okay, this is one of the ways that I have defined centering as I wrote out in my recent blog post. So let's break this down, right? Centering begins by coming into the core of your being. Now do this with me here, okay? Kind of simple little warm-up practice. Come into center. Come into the center of your being. Okay, as I say that, where do you go? Do you go into your heart? Do you go into your solar plexus? Maybe you come into the sort of physical center of gravity in your body, which is just below your navel. Where do you go to find center? Okay, so I wrote this out in the blog post as well. The way that I am defining and describing center as this practice is not as a fixed point. Okay, I do not want to box you into finding center in a particular place in your body. Maybe it's heart. No, as a yoga teacher, often we talk about heart center. But also, we sometimes use the chakra system. And in that case, solar plexus, this area sort of above your navel. This is often taught as center. But another powerful place to talk as center is your physical center of gravity, in sort of this area above your pelvis, below your navel. When I ask you today to go to center, where do you go? Go there. Rest your attention there just for a moment. Maybe take a few breaths into center. And let's continue talking about this because we'll go into a deeper practice later. Again, I don't want to box you into believing or understanding that center is a specific place in your body. Okay, center in the way we are working with it, which is more of a spiritual point, it can move. It can change day to day. It can change moment to moment. What matters is that you are able to find it within self. You are able to rest there within self. Can you find it? Can you rest there? And can you bring your full attention there? Can you rein in your consciousness? Pull it away from everything out in the world that has a hold on your consciousness. Rein it in. Can you rein it in so much that all of you returns home to a single point? Your center, the center of your being. So that's the first half, right? And that's, we could speak to this as kind of the first useful piece, right? Why? Why is centering important? Well, you guys, we live in a crazy world, and we live in these wild, wild times where there are trillions of dollars at play, right? Powerful forces that are constantly trying to take your attention. They are trying to take your consciousness. Your consciousness is a powerful thing to be able to take from you. Because when I have hold of your consciousness, I then start to have control over you. So if I want to sell you something, if I want to make you believe something or do something, having holds of your consciousness, that starts to become powerful. And that's not totally a bad thing, right? That's what I'm doing now. I want some degree of your consciousness, right? Your attention, your energy is directed towards my voice in this podcast right now. And I'm doing that because I want to help you, because I want to help this world. Sometimes, and especially when this happens to the degree that it's happening in our world, it no longer serves. How much money, how much power goes to marketing that is constantly trying to steal your attention, whether it's to sell a product or a service. The problem is not the sort of mechanism that I'm speaking to here. The problem is that we as modern beings are living in a world where there are too many forces with too much power constantly working to take our attention. So because of that, we walk through this world with our consciousness spread all over the place. Okay, now on top of that, we add to the fact that there's all the things we have to do, right? Have to get those ingredients for dinner. You have to finish that project. You have to talk to your boss about this and that. You have to get the kids from school to their activities. You have to feed the dog. You have to get the car fixed, and on and on and on it goes. So what happens, again, is we end up walking through life with our consciousness spread all over the place. And then, my God, we turn on the news or open our phones again, and these catastrophic happenings are happening here and there and there. And oh my gosh, now it's entering my neck of the woods. And right, it is so much. It is too much for a human being to handle in a skillful way. What needs to happen is this ability to rein in our consciousness, to pull it back, to return home to center. So again, in this moment, an invitation to find center. And as you find center, maybe taking a few breaths into the space, can you to whatever degree you're able, rein in your consciousness. Okay, that means your attention, your awareness into this point. Pull it in. Disconnect from all the places that have a hold on it, if only for a moment. Rein it in. Pull it in. Bring all of yourself to center. Breathe here. Rest here. Now, I want to name something about this. And this is something that, doesn't just have to do with centering. It really has to do with every aspect of the embodied path. This is not an all or none deal. Again, this is a practice. And if you can do this, but your attention is still partly on your children or something super important in your life, or maybe there's something that's really not that important, but you just can't disconnect it from it in this moment, that's fine. You don't lose points for that. There's no points here, you guys. This is about being wherever you are, whatever state you are, and leaning into, right, reaching for a state that is more skillful. That is not a perfect state. It's never a perfect state. It is, again, about leaning into a state that is more skillful than it was before. Coming to center is not something that is done in perfection. That being said, we can practice it and we can work at it so that over time, maybe we are able to disconnect from things that aren't serving to a greater and greater degree. And then as, we're going to lead into this with the next part of this practice. But there's also the ability to walk through life being connected to the things that are important, right? And this is where we're going to try to get to sort of ultimately. It's this ability to walk through life centered. Your consciousness, your being as at home within self. And as you're walking through life at home within self, you're still connected to what matters. Right? You're connected to your children, your loved ones, your partner, your pets, the forest you live in, whatever is important to you, whatever beings are important to you, you're connected to them. The things that need to get done, you're connected to them. But can you be skillful with your consciousness, with your attention, your awareness, your energy, in a way so that you can sever the connections that don't serve and that you can hold true to those connections that do. Okay, guys, we're going to do the second part of this practice in a moment, but before we do, I want to do a quick plug for membership. This is the Forest Membership Library. This is a space held fully online that contains a long list of guided meditation practices, guided embodiment practices, activations. This is my library of sort of the best practices that I have put out there. You can join for less than $10 a month, right? I have priced it so that there's different options so that you can choose a number that feels comfortable for you. If you want to, say, buy me a coffee each month, if you want to really contribute to my ability to hold this podcast, to teach the Embodied Path, to do everything that I'm doing here, this is important, you guys. I can't do what I do without your financial support. Signing up for membership is a super easy way to say thank you, to support my ability to do this, to be able to continue to grow our community, and to receive a large library of guided practices, right? So many opportunities to dive in, to do the work that we are talking about here. You can go to forestbody.com/membership to learn more about that. Okay, as promised, I just wanted to make that a quick plug. Let's head back to the second part of this centering practice. Okay, so we talked about this first part of centering, which has to do with sort of reining in your consciousness, bringing your attention, bringing your awareness fully to whatever degree you're able within self, to a point within self. So again, returning to center, wherever that is within you, reining in yourself here to this point. The second half of the practice then becomes this, okay? You ready? As you rest at home within center, can you maintain this centered connection as you then begin to expand your consciousness outward? So if your center point is within your heart, maybe you start to expand outward into your whole chest and out into your whole body, out just beyond your skin, right? The immediate environment around your body. You might use your breath to continue to breathe into the center point. You are keeping some degree of your consciousness here at center as you expand. So continuing to expand maybe into the whole room you are currently in. Expanding outward into the whole building, whole area that you are in. Expanding outward into the community / ecosystem that you are in. Continuing to expand. And again, as you expand, maintaining some degree of consciousness at center as you expand outward. Maybe you expand fully into the state that you are currently in, the country. Maybe you start to expand your consciousness across oceans. Can you get to a point where you rest centered at home within self as your consciousness expands the globe, wrapping around it, grounding down into it? You can be centered as you are expanded. You can be at home, deep within self, as you are aware of and connected into what is unfolding around you. This is what being centered is. This ability to rein in your consciousness, to pull it away from that which is unskillful, from that which does not serve. Come home to self, the center point within self. And can you walk through life centered within self as you are aware of, conscious to that which is unfolding around you? This isn't easy, guys, especially when we go out into the world and we are met with all those powerful forces and all those wild events that are unfolding. But what matters, right? What matters most with this practice? What matters most as you cultivate this skill and establish this state of being is that you are able to return to self, that you are able to live, right? You exist at home within self. Whatever that means for you, and wherever you go with that. Again, maybe you go to your heart, maybe you go to your solar plexus. Maybe it's not even really like a specific place within self. What matters is that you develop this and it's meaningful and useful, and important for you. As you walk through life connected into what matters, the beings, the happenings that matter. So at this point, I want to read again from the blog post, right? This written piece that I released just before this episode. This sort of writing on center. Quoting from this piece. Center is a point, but it is not a fixed point. It is a tool that helps collapse the complexities and dynamic nature of your being into one simple location, while also being that which holds the infinite potential of who you are in its form. Center is here to hold you within a world that is wild and ever-changing, dynamic as it is both adventurous and often even scary. Center means knowing yourself as whole and eternal, even as parts of you may shift and change. End quote there. I think the piece I want to speak to here, right, something that I speak to often, right, this dynamic nature and the complexities of life. You guys, life is wild, it's complex, it's dynamic, ever-changing. Parts of self come into being and they fall away, right? I think if there's sort of anything I can try to help the world understand is like we're not stable, fixed structures. Okay, I think there's this old way of being where that's about like finding out who you are, creating the life you want, and then clinging as tightly as you can to that. And I don't believe that's what life is about. I think we are here to learn and grow, try new things, embrace the things that are meaningful, important, fulfilling, joyful to us. And then when those things start to fall away because we're ready for new things, we need to be able to let them go with as much grace as possible. Life is ever-changing. We are ever-changing. But in that, we don't have to lose self. Again, capital S self. Not lowercase s, little self, right? Egoic self, the personality self. We're talking about higher self, that spiritual, maybe soulful self. That is, if one may believe it, eternal, right? And if you're not into that sort of belief, maybe you can sort of hold an idea for as long as you are here on this planet, it's the being that you are, right? There is part of self that is everlasting. This part of self cannot be harmed, can't be chipped away, can't be taken. It is eternal. And if we can sort of come home to this space, rest in this space, I find, and I know a lot of others are too, that we're able to relax a little bit. Let our nervous systems come into a more regulated state. right? This connects into the concept of grounding. We're able to breathe a little freer, right, with more ease. Then from this space, right, what comes next on the embodied path, we are able to be more aligned and discerning. Okay, so just to name a little bit about what's coming up next, alignment. So when I use the term alignment, right, so we're talking about centering as a single point. When we talk about alignment, we're talking about connecting all parts of self. Okay, so center is this idea of, again, collapsing the complexities. There are so many complexities. There are so many different aspects of who we are. And then there's all these aspects of who we are at play in this very complex and dynamic world. Centering collapses the complexities to a single point. Oh, that feels good, doesn't it? Feels so good to collapse the complexities to a single point. And also, those complexities do exist. The different aspects of who you are do exist, and you need to be able to walk through life with all those parts of self in alignment. Right? What really sucks, right, is when you walk through life and your head's telling you one thing and your heart's telling you another thing and your stomach's telling you another thing and your root is connected into something else, right? It sucks. Is that a skillful way to say it? Just plain sucks. It doesn't feel good. It's aggravating. It's anxiety provoking. It's really hard to make decisions from that point, which is, the fourth piece, discernment, the ability to make skillful decisions, and the ability to make skillful decisions and act with skill in this world. We have to bring all the parts of self into alignment, but that comes next. For now, we're hanging out at center. So take time to practice this. Take time to release distractions, maybe enter into more meditative space, find a seat, breathe into your body, make sure you're not going to be disturbed. Come into center. Maybe that's one place that you work within self for the next week. Maybe you show up for practice one day and center has moved. Again, I don't care so much about that. What I care about is that you find a point within self. Breathe into that point and be in the practice of bringing your whole attention to this point. Reining in the whole of your consciousness to this point. And then when a thought arises or there's a noise in your environment and you notice part of your consciousness getting pulled away from center, simply notice it and rein it back in. Okay, make this your meditation practice for the next week. Then if you want to add to it, from this centered space, expand your consciousness. Do it while you're seated in a quiet environment where you're not going to be disturbed. You're resting your full attention at center as you expand your consciousness outward. Then, and this is such an important piece, you guys, go out in life and embody this. Walk down the streets of the city centered within self, while your awareness is in all the places it needs to be so that you are safe and get to where you need to be going. Go walk through the forest and do this. Find a trail, walk it while you are centered within self, as your awareness is expanded so that you are staying safe and so that you are connected to the beautiful bird song and the beautiful views, all the lovely things that are out there to experience. Practice this in all the places that you go. and let us know what's arising for you. What feels good about this? What feels challenging about this? Again, if you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, go write in the comments of one of these posts. There's a whole bunch of posts related to this topic. Just leave a message. Let us all know what's going on. If you don't want to do it publicly, you can send me an email directly. My email's still currently katie@upwardslopes.com, but that's going to be changing soon. If you guys have been hanging around, you've been with me as we've migrated from the Upward Slopes platform over to Forest Body. My email is still Upward Slopes. There's still a few things, including membership. Basically, all paid online programs are still held on the Upward Slopes website. That's where I built them. It's going to be a pain to move them. I'm sure I will someday, but right now I am a one-man operation. So anyway, you can find everything from forestbody.com. Just wanted to point that out as we are in this migratory phase. Once again, let us know, let me know what's going on over there in your practice. Okay, guys, one more piece. If you're still listening with me, here at the end, I have an exciting bit of news to drop here again for you listeners that are here with me all the way at the end. There's some big unfoldings in my life right now. There are some really big happenings. Yes, the world is crazy and awful in so many ways. And just like you, I'm dealing with it. I'm showing up in the places that I think I can best make an impact. I am being aware of what's going on while also trying to not get dragged down by it. So as life out there is wild in a lot of ways, awful. In my own life, a lot of really big, exciting, amazing things are happening. I am getting married in just a couple months. I have found my person who is someone who I just never imagined I would be able to meet, someone who sees the world in the way I do. Even more than that, helps me to more fully see the world in the way that I do. In a lot of ways, the way I see things are different from the status quo. Haha, you guys know that. I'm here trying to be a stand for doing things differently, and I was blown away when I found someone with a similar worldview and has similar practices that I do, but also has come into it from a very different perspective. And he just released his book, and with the release of his book that he's been working on for so long, it's such an amazing book, you guys. I will be giving you details on it soon, and it becomes relevant because Albert, my soon-to-be husband, is going to be joining us here on the show. I think what that's going to look like is him being a part-time co-host. He is going to be another voice that is able to join me so that this can be less about me just talking to you guys, but actually make this more of a conversation. It's also going to lead us into a space where I want to talk about some things that, maybe I'll say I've been a little bit apprehensive or afraid of breaking into. Albert is somebody that grounds me. Albert is a powerful grounding force in this world. He is also someone who is a powerful, magical energetic and mystical being. And with that, I am so excited to stay in this grounded space, you guys. So much about what we are doing here, right? And this is the first step of the embodied path, is grounding. This is so important for people who hang out in spiritual spaces. It's also important for just any human being here on this earth. We have to stay grounded. We have to be connected to reality, because we cannot be floating off into the realm of the airy-fairy, okay? That is a path to bullshit. That being said, as we are grounded, as we are connected, all of our senses to reality, this is the state from which we get to open what is actually here at play in our world. And I know far too many people, the bulk of humanity, you guys, is stuck, shall we say, overly grounded, but in an unskillful way, stuck in thought patterns, stuck in belief systems that are just too rigid and too small. Because you guys, this world, there is so much here at play that will continue to blow our minds. And that's what's been happening for me over the past years. My mind being blown over and over and over by what I thought to be real and true, really just being limited. And there are ways of being we can be in this world that are expansive and magical and mystical. And I couldn't be happier that Albert's going to come on here and help me to branch even more so into these spaces. There will be so much more to come on the details of that. That doesn't mean that these sort of episodes where I just sit down to teach you this spiritual framework, right? These episodes are not going away, but we are going to expand. We are going to expand, and we're going to expand in a way that I couldn't be more excited for. Okay, you guys, closing down for today. One more reminder. Go do those centering practices. Make a routine of them. Go out, walk through life, practicing this state, this skill of being centered. Go to forestbody.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter if you are not yet. Check out some of the articles and different episodes up there. Become a member. Become a member. I couldn't be happier to see more of you guys signing up, showing your support, showing me that you are out there and what I am doing matters. Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in this space today. It means the world knowing that our community is out there doing this important work to make this world a little bit brighter, maybe even a whole lot brighter. All right, big love, you guys, and I'll catch you next time.